Is this a strategy or does this just feel a little chaotic?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here.
It is mainly, I would say, 90% Meghan who's running the show, because this is a woman who does not want to take orders from anybody.
Agreed. It is in everyone's interest if she is able to make a success of this and make money off the back of this.
It's their royal connections that really irritate me, and they're piggybacking off that a great deal.
Actually, I thought this was one of the most interesting episodes in the series.
I'm dubbing Lilibet the Jigsaw girl because over the 4 years, all we've seen is an ankle, an arm, a bit of a nose, maybe a forehead.
Sometimes you feel a bit excluded from the conversation as a listener because there's an awful lot of gushing chat.
It would be a nice ending to this terrible story, that they all get back together and sort of chunter off into the hills and holding hands like something from The Sound of Music. But it's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
Hello and welcome to The Sun's Royal exclusive show. I'm Bronte Coy, news.com.au's royal reporter, and I'm filling in for your usual host, The Sun's royal editor, Matt Wilkinson, who's on a well-earned break. I'm delighted to have with me here in studio Royal Correspondent Sarah Hewson and The Sun's former royal correspondent and author, Charles Ray. Hello to you both.
Hello.
As always, we've got plenty on the agenda this week, so let's dive right in. We'll start with the fact that we thought Meghan's podcast series, Confessions of a Female Founder, had already wrapped up, but we've just been given a bonus episode featuring Beyonce's mum, Tina Knowles. We'll get into that in a sec, but first of all, I want to talk about what's going on with the restock of her brand as ever. So the first drop of products sold out within an hour, though we don't know how many were actually available. And then Meghan said she was going to take a pause. So we assumed that we'd have a little while before there was another restock. I believe just yesterday she posted saying there's more on the way. Is this a strategy or does this just feel a little chaotic?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here because in the last episode of her podcast at Bronte, she told Tina Knowles that, you want to get the products out there. They sold out. They planned for a year, she said. They sold out within 45 minutes. As you say, we don't know how many products they had in the first place. There was talk that this was all a marketing ploy. Hasn't this product line done well because it's just a complete sellout? And then she said, but I've thought about whether I continually restock. I want people to have the products on their shelves, in their fridges, not just once every 6 months. I want them to have them all the time. But she didn't want to annoy customers, so she told her team, let's pause, let's get everything in order, and then we'll restock. Then last night on her social media feed, she posted that there was new products coming, a restock coming, and you could sign up for email updates. It does say on that they're limited seasonal varieties. So whether or not these are slightly different products that she's bringing on board, I don't know. But it is unclear what the long-term plan is in terms of that product line and getting it out there en masse, which has to be the kind of big plan for this business and its growth.
And it is confusing as well for people that are following what she's releasing because, as you've just mentioned, she talked about that pause, but that episode was filmed 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So presumably if the strategy had changed, they could have edited that out of the episode.
Well, they could have done. I mean, the problem with Meghan is whatever she says, you've got to take with a pinch of salt because we know from past comments that she's made that she keeps on saying it's her truth, which doesn't necessarily marry up with everyone else's truth of what actually is happening. I'm not a businessman, but I would have thought that if you were setting up a new company, you would have enough product, on the shelves or wherever it is kept to satisfy the demand. Now, what we don't know is we don't know how many pots of jam or pots of honey at £10 a jar for jam and £22 a jar for honey. Now, if she wants everyone to keep that on the shelves, that's an awful lot of money and is going to add to the cost of living for a lot of Americans. So what we don't know is how many of these items that they had for sale. It could have been half a dozen, it could have been 600, it could have been 6,000, we don't know. But they went out over 45 minutes, she claims. And you're absolutely right. 2 months ago, she recorded a programme saying they were having a pause at the moment and they were going to be looking at things. And then last night, again, she's changed her mind. I think it is a strategy that she has devised to carry on with the interest for the products that she's going to sell.
So you believe it's a marketing ploy? Is it
I do.
working?
Well, the problem is we don't know the figures.
Yeah.
That's it. We don't know how many pots of jam or how many pots of honey she sold initially. And we won't know, again, how many pots of jam or honey or whatever else she's going to be selling will be sold out, whatever. Now, she said that the original tranche of stuff was supposed to last for a year. But 45 minutes, that is a remarkable sales.
Yes.
You know, even for someone who is media savvy as Meghan is.
And also, she does have Netflix behind this business as well. I mean, she talks to Tina Knowles about starting a business from your kitchen table, which is what she did. And a lot of this podcast series is about learning lessons from people who are further down the line from her.
Yeah.
But Meghan isn't doing this on her own. Meghan has a big machine around her in the form of Netflix. She's also had a big TV show in which to launch her product line. So it's very different to an individual starting making jam at their kitchen table.
And Netflix is the big one there, because that is the other element that I was going to raise. I'm glad you have, because do you think that these decisions are largely coming from Team Meghan, or do you think that Netflix would be a driving force behind the way that this is rolling out?
Well, again, we don't really know the structure of this business deal, do we? And whether Netflix are a more silent partner in the as ever business, but it is, in collaboration with Love Meghan, because we see her making the products on With Love Meghan, and then you can buy them. Netflix have got this range of stores coming out where you can go and buy things that you've seen on shows on the streaming platform. But it is very different to a one-woman band trying to get a product from her kitchen table to scale. Yeah. She does talk about the problems of that, but I think she has a lot of opportunity there.
I sort of agree with you, Sarah, except you've got to remember that when she first started, what was it, Riviera
American Riviera Orchard.
American Riviera. So they've had
R.I.P.
So that's gone. They've had so she's had to rebrand. She's had to look at other things to do with it. So it's not been perfect. My view is that it is mainly, I would say, 90% Meghan who's running the show, because this is a woman who does not want to take orders from anybody.
I agree. She doesn't want to let go, and I guess she is putting her name to it. But yes, it has been chaotic. Whether or not that's the sort of thing you'd expect when you're launching any small business, it's just that this one is playing out in the public eye in a really
But that's
big
what she
way.
wants.
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
she wants. She wants it played out in the public eye, because that is one of the main ways that she has got to sell £10 pots.
And that's why
jam.
they sell out in 45 minutes, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's very rich Americans.
The issue is it doesn't seem that strategic, though, when it does change a lot, and the public perception is that it does appear a little chaotic. And further to that, Meghan's had a few projects now that haven't survived long past their infancy or season one, as was the case with her first podcast. Do you think that she really needs to be careful now to show that she's committing to this long term, and that's a reputational issue?
I don't think that she bothers about that much about that. As far as she's concerned, she's there. I've got no objections to Meghan and Harry making money, none whatsoever. However they want to operate now is fine. It's their royal connections that really irritate me, and they're piggybacking off that a great deal. But I think Meghan is the one who's driving everything, and I think she will eventually come a cropper with all this. I mean, she says, "I don't want to annoy the public." Well, why not? She's annoyed everybody else. I mean, she is a very annoying person, in my view.
But I do agree with Charles that it is in everyone's interest if she is able to make a success of this and make money off the back of this, because we know they've got a very expensive lifestyle, not least the security costs, and Prince Harry just having lost that Court of Appeal case. It is in everyone's interest, the royal family included, if they are able to be self-sufficient, if they're able to build a life. Prince Harry can do his philanthropy, Meghan can launch the business. Well, I mean, I think that suits everybody.
And if 5 years on from Megxit, they wanted the financial independence. So exactly as you say, this is hopefully what's going to happen with this business. And moving on now to this bonus episode itself with Tina Knowles, it was a bit of a departure from earlier episodes in that it had a lot more showbiz flair to it. Of course, it's Beyonce's mum. Do we think that this is what we're going to see more of moving forward with Meghan's podcast, or do you think that this was just going out with a bang?
I think that's what Lemonader will be hoping for if there's a second series. And of course, we don't know yet whether there is going to be a second series. But this was a bonus episode. The series had come to an end, and then we got this announcement that there was going to be this extra episode featuring, what did she call her? The matriarch. The matriarch and the mum mogul, I think she called Tina Knowles. And she made it very clear that Tina Knowles had picked up the phone to her.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, I picked up on that.
Yes, and that you don't turn down a call like that. You pick up the phone and then you do this episode. Actually, I thought this was one of the most interesting episodes in the series because Tina Knowles has a really, really interesting story to tell about launching her own hair care business, about going into business with her daughter Beyonce, about managing family businesses and the disagreements that come along the way. And as I was listening to that, I was thinking, ooh, the family firm and disagreements. And there was one particular line that stood out for me when Tina said, you know, of course we disagree as family, and when we're in business together and we're working together, there will be disagreements, but I don't let them kind of sit. I can't. I pick up the phone and I make up because I don't want to miss that time. And I thought, oh, wow, okay. Because, you know, you're talking to someone who is no longer speaking to her father and whose husband is no longer speaking to his father, and a lot of time is passing.
It really stood out because she used the phrase wasted time, and Meghan agreed and said, yes, it's wasted time.
Yes.
And at the end of that sentence, you think, surely, as exactly as you've said, it felt pointed. Surely she had that reflection of, well, there's a lot of people around in our lives.
The thing about Tina Knowles is, you know, she's a very, very successful businesswoman, but it's her background, you know, coming up in, you know, in Texas when she was very young, where there was segregation and everything else. I mean, it is really fascinating story, and I'm hoping to get hold of the book that she's just done. And I think it was I don't know who rang who, whether it was Tina rang Meghan or Meghan rang Tina or whatever. Whoever it was, that was a very, very smart move to get someone like her on that podcast. You know, to talk about a whole a variety of subjects. And I agree with Sarah. You know, that put down of, you know, I never let, you know, you've got to not have arguments within the family and everything else. I mean, that is a great put down. I bet she forgets that bit.
And I'm glad you touched on it then, because there have been reports previously that Meghan had struggled to get, you know, A-list names on her show and on the podcast. How important for her brand, Meghan moving forward and away from the royal connection, how important is it for her to get those names involved in what she's doing?
I think it's very, very important. I mean, when you look at a company in the UK called Warburton's, which makes bread, and they've had Samuel L. Jackson, Robert De Niro, you know, advertising their bread. Now that is a lot of money. Now she needs to get hold of A-list, really triple A-list celebrities on those podcasts to help sell that stuff that she's making.
And also people who want to be involved in their own right, not just because they're friends in Montecito with Meghan, because that has been my slight bugbear with this podcast. Sometimes you feel a bit excluded from the conversation as a listener, because there's an awful lot of gushing chat, there's a lot of praising of each other, there's a lot of talk about people that we don't know. In this episode, they were talking about, I think it was Yvette, who I think is Beyonce's PR or manager. They were talking about Tyler, well, that's Tyler Perry, who, of course, helped Meghan and Harry and gave them a house when they first moved to California. But there's a lot of conversations about people they know and we don't know. And there's a lot of kind of matiness going on. I'd really love to see some of these guests being booked because they want to be a part of Meghan's podcast, because they believe in that brand, not just because they're trying to do each other favours.
I'd also like to see us bring in the celebrities that she doesn't actually know.
Yes.
You can have a conversation with, you know, okay, she's never going to be a Graham Norton, but you know, I'd like her to have a conversation with people, a normal conversation without mentioning Tyler and Yvette and all this sort of stuff.
It's her getting to know them at the same time as us, the listener. And
we did see a little bit of that in With Love Meghan, didn't we? When sometimes she brought in, I can't remember which one of the chefs it was, and she said, we've never met before, but we kind of connected on social media.
Later
now.
part of the season.
And we saw her learning from him. And actually those episodes were the stronger ones, where you really see those first conversations and a more natural interview than that kind of matiness.
And now that the podcast season is wrapped up, I believe, surely, I think that's it now. What did we make of it? What's our review of the first season of Confessions of a Female Founder?
I mean, I thought the last one was the best, without a shadow of a doubt. The rest of it, for me, was so-so. It didn't grab me at all. It's just Meghan sort of being gushing about everything and everyone, and trying to sell jam and honey.
I'm hearing a 1 star out of 5.
If it's that high.
Okay.
I thought this was a big improvement on archetypes. I didn't feel quite so preached to as I did in the Archetypes series. I thought some of the conversations were really interesting because the guests had interesting stories to tell. And Meghan is at her best when she lets her guest tell their story and when she really listens and learns, because that is what this whole concept is about. Confessions of a Female Founder, learning the lessons from those who've gone before. And so I think if there's to be another series, more of that, more of those really interesting stories. And of course, we, as royal commentators, are listening out for all the nuggets about royal life. They're really interesting, but that isn't what this podcast is ultimately about if Meghan wants to be taken seriously as a businesswoman.
And before we move on, actually, from the podcast, one other little thing I picked up on that we need to keep an eye on is she mentioned the possibility of going into business with Lilibet in the future.
God.
Do we think we'll see that?
Well, we're a long way off, aren't we? Because little Lilibet is only 4 years old. But she talks about Tina and Beyonce going into business with their hair care range at Sacred, and she asked for advice about, what would you suggest if someone was to go into business with a family member or a daughter? I'd love to think about Lily and I being in business one day. I mean, who knows whether Lily will be taking on the jams and honeys and the floral sprinkles in the future.
Maybe.
I don't see a problem with it sometime in the future if that's the way she wants to go. I mean, because Lilibet's never going to be on the royal treadmill as such, well, as far as we know. So she's never going to be involved in doing royal duties like George, Charlotte, and Louis will eventually when they become of age. So I don't see any great problem in her setting up a business with Lilibet, but it's going to take at least another 16 odd years before it gets anywhere close to it.
Watch this space though. And speaking of, as you mentioned, she's just turned 4 today actually, so a big happy birthday to Lilibet. And Meghan marked the occasion by posting 2 quite intimate pictures, and one of which is almost Lilibet's whole face, which we haven't seen in years. This is quite a departure from their previous attitude towards sharing pictures of the kids. What do we think? I
like your definition of almost the full face. I mean, I'm dubbing Lilibet the Jigsaw girl because over the 4 years, all we've seen is an ankle, an arm, a bit of a nose, maybe a forehead. I didn't think it was a great picture, to be perfect. I was much more interested in the picture that she released today of Lilibet when she was barely born.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really nice picture, and I thought it came across very well in black and white. The other one, with her arms all over her face practically and everything else, didn't do anything for me. I'm all for them protecting their children. I've got no problems with that as well. But, this sort of half bits of the child, it doesn't do anything for me.
Well, the last time we had a proper portrait of Lilibet released was 3 years ago to mark her first birthday. And that was taken in the grounds of Frogmore Cottage, where they held a party for Lily's birthday. They were over for the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. But apart from that, we haven't really seen her face. We see the backs of them. It was Archie's birthday last month. We saw a picture of him looking out over a sunset, didn't we? This one, Meghan's got kind of her hair blowing. It looks to me like they might be on a boat, potentially, and she's got her arms around Lily. But I agree that the much more interesting photo, actually, which is really intimate and really personal, is that skin-to-skin moment between mother and newborn baby, Meghan cradling her in her arms. Looks like she's just been born. And of course, we do know so little about Lilibet because They moved to California. They are very protective over their children's privacy, and they have every right to do so. We know that their safety is a huge issue. But these little glimpses, not forgetting we saw her in a little beekeeper suit last week.
I was just going to say, I mean, that was the way that picture came out was her fully covered in a beekeeper suit. You just think, what is from the back? You couldn't even see anything through the net because it was from the back, and you just think, what was the point of that?
They're releasing bits of the kids, but in a very guarded way still. But you know, both Harry and Meghan have been accused in the past of hypocrisy in this area. And I'm interested in both of your view because as a parent, of course, I do understand it is completely your prerogative what you share of your children online. They have said things in the past about their privacy, and then now Meghan, having launched her Instagram in January, she has been releasing more and more of the kids, which is her decision. But do you feel that there's any hypocrisy in that, or do you think it's fair play now that she has her own social media?
I think it's fair play now, actually, because they are no longer working members of the royal family. I think with the Waleses, they recognise that their children are going to play a part in public life.
I agree.
And they are being funded by the public as well. And they are going to take on significant roles in the future of the country and the monarchy, and therefore they recognise that they need to share. But they're also quite careful about when they share those moments of their children's lives, and there are pretty stringent restrictions on what can be shown and what can't. With Harry and Meghan, of course, we'd all love to see more because we're really interested in those little children. But I think it's entirely fair that they say, you know what, it's on our terms. And that's what this is, very much on their terms. Meghan on her own platform, the images they choose to curate.
I think I agree with Sarah. I mean, much and all as I would like to see a proper picture of both Archie and Lilibet, you know, I understand fully that they want to protect the children. I mean, we live in a social media world now where everything that happens is commented on, usually by nutters around the world who say vile and evil things. We can't seem to stop it. So I don't have any real problem with it. And again, I agree with Sarah about William and Catherine. You know, their children are eventually going to be on the royal treadmill, but they are very cautious with the times that the children, have access to the public, or the public have access to them.
Absolutely. And look, there's a lot to discuss there with the Sussexes as always, but we do have to move on. Before we do, very briefly, there's been a report this week that Prince Harry was considering changing his name to Spencer. Obviously, that's the name of his late mother, Princess Diana, and it would presumably mean that he was ditching the family name Mountbatten-Windsor, and obviously comes at a time where relations between Harry and the royal family seem to be at an all-time low. He ultimately decided against the move, according to this report, but the fact he even considered it sends quite a message.
Yes, it does. And I think as well that this is another Harry not knowing what he wants to do. It was only, less than a month ago that he was pleading for a reconciliation with his father and his brother. And the next thing we hear, and I think the story was well sourced, and the next thing we hear, he wants to change the name from Mountbatten-Windsor to Spencer. Well, that is sending a terrible message to the royal family that he doesn't really want a reconciliation. He wants to be completely severed from the royal family. And I think the king should grant his wish. I think he should sever him from the royal family.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really sad if this is true. We don't know exactly when this conversation happened, but it's reported to have been during a recent visit back to the UK. He was advised by his uncle, Earl Spencer, Diana's younger brother, that it just would be legally insurmountable to do so. And I mean, I didn't see this one coming. I don't know about you, Charles, because there's been so much controversy over the use of the name Sussex and whether or not they still have the right to do so. And Meghan saying, look, I'm a Sussex now. But that they might have considered changing their name to Spencer. Why? I mean, is it to send a message to the royal family? Is it to say, OK, fine, you don't want to talk to us, then we're not a part of this anymore? Is it because he feels much closer to his Spencer relatives? They are the ones who turned up for the 10th anniversary Invictus service at St Paul's, for example. There weren't any members of the royal family there. Is it to honour his mother? Some more cynical commentators have suggested, well, it would be very good marketing in the United States to have the Spencer name, and Lilibet would then be Lilibet Diana Spencer.
It's also, I mean, you mentioned it there as well. I wondered if it had any connection to that rather awkward scene in With Love Meghan when Meghan corrected Mindy Kaling on the last name and said, well, you know, I'm not Markle anymore, I'm Sussex now. And then there was confusion about whether that's actually her last name. Could it be related to that? Because it would be, presumably Meghan would then also be Spencer.
Well, no, the royals tend, if they get a title, that as Prince William did, you know, he was William of Wales, and Harry was Harry Wales when he was at school. So he gets married and he gets conferred a title, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. He then instantly becomes Harry Sussex. So that's the way it works. Although he still has, I mean, in the background, he is still a Mountbatten Windsor, as are that's the royal dynasty. So I don't think it's that confusing as such. I just don't understand why he'd want to change his name to Spencer. Well, sorry, I do understand, because if the story is correct, then it is sending a huge message to the royal family. You know, I'm not really interested in the reconciliation. It's never going to happen. I may as well not bother with it at all.
It does appear to be sort of along that line.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with Charles, actually, that I think too much has been made about this Sussex surname and whether Meghan has the right to use it or not, because she does.
She does.
And it's up to the king. They are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. They do still have those titles. They don't use the HRH, but they are still the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and therefore Sussex becomes their kind of unofficial surname, as you've described it, and the children will be, Archie Sussex and Lilibet Sussex. They were christened Mountbatten Windsor, but they can use that name as the Wales children do at school.
But one of the things that irritates me is that people are still referring to her as Meghan Markle.
Yes.
And people are still referring to Catherine as Catherine Middleton.
Yeah,
you know,
and they ceased to be that on the day they got married and chose to take.
It's like any bride who wants to change the name, that's fine by them. But she's now Catherine Wales.
Yes,
that's it. And George is George Wales, Louis is Louis Wales.
Although it is confusing for the children, isn't it? Because when the parents' titles changed, they went from being George Cambridge to George Wales at school. I mean, they had one day at their new school as the Cambridge children before they became the Wales children.
Yeah, that is. I have to say that is confusing.
And actually, it was pointed out to me this week that they are the one family that really don't need a surname. Because we don't need to, Meghan.
If we can have Madonna, if we can have the Cher, we can have. At this point, whether you love her or hate her, you know her.
If Cheryl Cole from Girls Aloud can get away with just being called Cheryl, and Meghan and the rest of the royal family are in a completely different stratosphere.
We know that Harry has ultimately decided not to take the name Spencer, if this report is correct. But how do you think this whole claim would have gone down with Prince William, as it's his mother as well?
I would have thought he'd have been furious when he heard it. I mean, I have to say that we don't actually know if this is a true story, but I believe it is to be true, because you've got to look at where the story came out from and who wrote the story, and that is a very, very good royal reporter who wrote it in the Mail on Sunday. Catherine Griffiths, I think. Charlotte Griffiths, sorry, who's very well placed, and the Mail get away with an awful lot of good royal stories. And Spencer nor Harry have issued any denials, even through their friends later on, when other people have tried to follow it up. So I believe the story to be true. And I think William will be, I'm not sure how much more hurt William can take with his brother, but I think this would have hurt him deeply that, Harry wants to have a final cut-off.
Absolutely. So we'll move on now to our last topic. Staying on Prince William, though, he and Catherine had quite a scary incident over the weekend. An intruder broke into Windsor Castle, just yards away from their home, Adelaide Cottage. The man is said to have climbed over a wall to get into the grounds around lunchtime on Sunday, and it's understood the Waleses were at home with their 3 children. Now, a similar event happened at Windsor Castle just, I think, 6 months ago, last October. Does the palace need to tighten security? Well,
I think we have to sort of say to the police that they did a very, very good job. The trouble is at Windsor is that they have removed the armed guards at the main gates. Now, I know this guy didn't come through the main gates, so you've still got armed guards who patrol the inner circle of the castle. And every time, I think this is about the 4th or 5th time that someone has got into the grounds. I think the guy who had the crossbow, who was...
Christmas Day, 2021.
Day,
the one who said he wanted to kill the Queen.
He wanted to kill the Queen. Well, he got arrested, within feet of a door that would have led him into where the Queen may have been. And it's reminiscent of years and years ago of a guy called Michael Fagan who climbed the railings at Buckingham Palace and actually sat on the Queen's bed while she was still in it. And, and she had to call her butler, Paul Wybrow, to get him out. So, your question about do the police need to tighten up? Yes, they do, because it's always under review. They can never cover every brick of Windsor Castle or any royal residence, but I think the police do an excellent job in protecting the royal family.
And you mentioned the incident 6 months ago in October, and that was when intruders managed to get in through the Shaw Farm gate, and they stole a pickup truck and a quad bike. And this was a burglary, really, but they used that pickup truck to then ram the gate. That one was pretty close to Adelaide Cottage. This one, Town Gate in Windsor, was quite a bit further away from the main house, but it's a vast estate. There is a security cordon within the Windsor estate protecting most of the properties in it. Not, of course, Royal Lodge, where Prince Andrew lives, and that's why there's been so much controversy over his continued residence there. But, there have been a number of incidents now.
And let's not forget that as Sarah says, that there is this outer ring of protection, but William, Catherine and the children would have had their own personal protection officers with them in any case. So there is a second line of security that would have hopefully would have dealt with any real serious problems.
As there should be. And
as there should be.
It's still a scary incident. I'm sorry to end it on that note as well. We're going to move into our quickfire questions, though, so that will lighten it up a little. We're just going to do quick answers. Whoever wants to go first can jump in. We've just talked about Meghan discussing possibly going into business with Lily in the future. Which parent-child royal business would you have liked to see, or would you like to see?
I think the ultimate would have been the late Queen and her mother, the Queen Mother. Handbags and headscarves, maybe.
Oh, what a shame. I would have loved that. That's a good one.
I would have... I'm against the working royals setting up any business at all with their children, because they don't need to. They have a job.
Yes, they have a firm. They have a family firm.
They have a family firm anyway. So it's all right for Meghan because she's not a working royal, and what she does in America is up to her. And best of luck to her.
Well, it's working in the hypotheticals, and we can dream. We can only dream of that duo.
That is a good one, though.
Should Harry and Meghan change their family name and move away from any royal connection entirely?
I think that would be really sad, because I think everyone's long-term hope is that there can be some form of reconciliation. And, it doesn't look like it at the moment, does it?
No.
And certainly not after Prince Harry's most recent interview. But for the sake of the King, who, let's not forget, is continuing to undergo cancer treatment and is deeply saddened about that rift with his son, I think we do have to hope that there can be some form of rapprochement between them in the future. And for the children too, for Archie and Lilibet to know their roots.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with Sarah on that. It would be really nice. It would be a nice ending to this terrible story, that they all get back together and sort of chunter off into the hills and holding hands like something from The Sound of Music. But it's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And I totally agree with Sarah as well, I think it's the worst thing is that Archie and Lilibet will not only get to not know their grandfather, but they won't even get to know their uncle, who will be king. No matter what happens in the future, they will still have those royal connections. However severance comes, they will still be related by blood to the king and his son.
So I feel it's a no across the board, that we keep the royal connection.
Yeah.
Okay. So lastly, if Meghan's podcast does get a season 2, who would you like to see her have as a guest?
Well, she's just had Beyonce's mum, so why not Beyonce, then I mean, Beyonce and her, we saw in Netflix in the series that Beyonce, texts Meghan.
She called her B.
Yeah, Harry and Meghan just went to Beyonce's concert recently, so I'd like to see her.
I think, I don't disagree, but I would like to see Taylor Swift. That is the biggest name going out. I mean, it'd be hard to say who's got more clout, Taylor Swift or Beyonce. But you get Taylor Swift on a podcast talking about it.
Yes.
It is box office. And talk about selling out in 45 minutes, you'd have been sold out in half an hour.
Absolutely. Great answers, guys. And thank you so much for your time. It's been such an interesting conversation. And that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments as we do read them. And don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. I'll be back with Matt Wilkinson next week.